All right, so what happens when what you hear about a politician completely clashes with what you see on the street? Well, today we're going to break down a Sky News report that captured that exact moment. It followed One Nation's Pauline Hanson and Cory Bernardi on the campaign trail. And, it gives us this really raw, unfiltered look at politics way outside the usual polished press conferences. So the report just jumps right in. It wastes absolutely no time setting up this central conflict. And it all kicks off with this one really pointed accusation from a political rival. Honestly, this one comment, it sets the stage for everything else that happens that day. And here it is. This is the quote that starts it all, from Labor Minister Andrew Giles. He calls One Nation's supporters less well-educated and, ignorant. And right away, that paints a very specific and, let's be honest, a deeply controversial picture of who their voters are. Well, the response was, fast and pretty sharp. Hanson right away calls it elitist and says her supporters are just salt-of-the-earth people. But Cory Bernardi, he takes it to another level. He directly compares it to Hillary Clinton's famous deplorables comment. And the message there is crystal clear. This isn't just a one-off insult. It's part of a pattern, right? It's the political elites looking down on regular voters. Okay, so that's the setup, right? The battle lines are drawn. And this is where the report really pivots. It moves away from all the political talk and goes right to the street. The big question becomes, how does this whole elitist accusation actually stack up when Hanson and Bernardi meet real voters face-to-face in a mall in Adelaide? And almost immediately, we hear from a supporter who basically says exactly what Hanson was talking about. You notice the appeal isn't really about some complex policy detail. Nope, it's about this one core idea, standing up for Australian values. That theme just pops up right away as a huge reason for their support. Then we hear this other message, one you hear a lot in these kinds of movements. We need our country back. But here's the really crucial detail the reporter points out. This person used to vote for the mainstream Liberal Party. So this isn't just a diehard longtime supporter. It hints that maybe something is shifting, that the traditional conservative base might be cracking a little. Now, the journalist makes a real point of including this next interaction. It's a supporter who says they have a migrant background, and they're passionately telling Hanson to keep up the good fight. Now, think about the context here. The party is constantly facing accusations of racism, so this moment is shown as this powerful, on-the-ground pushback against that whole narrative. So as the reporter is seeing all of this unfold, you can kind of feel the focus of the story start to shift. The journalist himself seems genuinely surprised, almost taken aback by what he's seeing. He goes from just, documenting the day to really trying to analyze this reception he clearly wasn't expecting. Oh, yeah, he doesn't pull any punches with his description. I mean, this is a journalist who has done tons of these street walks with all kinds of politicians. And he says this one is different. He sums up the whole scene in just a few words, like a rock star. And when you hear that, you know this is something way beyond just your standard political support. So what exactly made him say rock star? Well, he points to a couple of key things. First, he notes that people from all sorts of different cultural backgrounds were coming up to show support. But the real kicker for him, the real wow moment, it was his own camera crew. These are people who are supposed to be neutral observers, right? They got so swept up in the moment that they asked Hanson for a selfie after they finished filming. And as a reporter says, that does not happen. But the day wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. Just when you think the official stuff is done, the politicians are sitting down for a coffee, the report documents this really sudden, dramatic turn of events. So according to the reporter, a group he identifies as SA socialist protesters actually tracked them down to the cafe they were in. And just like that, a confrontation breaks out. He grabs his personal phone and starts filming the whole chaotic scene from inside the cafe. And the reporter's own take on what happened is pretty blunt. He just straight up describes the protesters' behavior as rude and aggressive. And you can see he's trying to capture the really raw, hostile energy of that moment. But then, right in the middle of all that chaos, the report shows this incredible moment of contrast. You've got protesters swarming the taxi, they're shouting, there's hostility, and at the same time, you see at least 3 supporters actually push their way through that crowd just to offer Hanson a few words of encouragement. It was like the entire day's polarization boiled down into one single moment, happening right there in real time. So after everything he's seen, you've got the political attacks, the rockstar reception on the street, and then that tense final confrontation, the reporter pieces it all together and makes a final, pretty bold prediction. His conclusion is basically this. What he saw on the ground in Adelaide, that surge of support, he doesn't think it's just a local thing. He predicts that this is the start of a whole new chapter for One Nation, and that it's going to have huge, huge ripple effects felt all across the country. And all of this really leaves us with one big question, doesn't it? I mean, this report showed this huge gap between, on one hand, a political attack calling supporters ignorant, and on the other, this really diverse, enthusiastic welcome they got on the street. So it makes you wonder, right? How much of what we think we know about any political movement is shaped by the media narrative versus what's actually happening on the ground?